Have you ever walked away from a conversation and replayed every second in your head? You spoke, you contributed, you even smiled at the right moments, and yet somehow it felt like nobody really saw you. Nobody remembered what you said. Nobody asked for your opinion. Nobody looked at you the way they looked at everyone else. And then comes the painful question, what is wrong with me? Because here's the strange thing about feeling invisible. It's not just about being ignored. It's about feeling like you're present physically, but absent emotionally. Like you're sitting at the table, but somehow you're not actually in the room. If you've ever felt that way, I want you to know something important. You are not imagining it. And more importantly, you're probably not invisible for the reason you think. I learned this lesson in one of the most uncomfortable moments of my life. Years ago, I walked into a networking event convinced that I was prepared. I had practiced introductions, I had rehearsed stories, I had read books about confidence and charisma. I was ready, or at least I thought I was. Within 10 minutes, I found myself standing in a circle of 6 people, nodding politely while everyone else seemed to effortlessly bounce ideas back and forth. Every time I tried to speak, someone interrupted me. Every time I found an opening, the conversation moved on. And eventually, I did what many of us do when we feel invisible. I became smaller. I spoke less. I smiled more. I convinced myself that I was just not that interesting. Have you ever done that? Have you ever entered a room with energy and left feeling like someone slowly turned your volume down? Here's what shocked me. The problem wasn't that I lacked confidence. The problem wasn't that people disliked me. The problem wasn't even that I had nothing valuable to say. The real problem was that I fundamentally misunderstood how human attention works, because attention is not given to the loudest person. It's given to the person who creates emotional relevance. And once I understood that, everything changed. Let's talk about the first reason you might feel invisible in conversations. You are trying to earn permission to exist. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you started a sentence with, "Sorry, but," or "This might sound stupid," or "I don't know if this matters, but," what are you actually doing? You're asking permission before you've even spoken. I used to do this constantly. I'd have an idea during a meeting and think, okay, make sure it's smart enough first. Then I'd mentally edit it. Then I'd edit the edit. Then someone else would say something similar, and suddenly everyone thought they were brilliant. Meanwhile, I sat there thinking, that was literally what I was going to say. Sound familiar? Here's the truth. People don't respond to certainty because certainty is always correct. People respond to certainty because certainty feels safe. Imagine you're walking through an unfamiliar city. Who do you follow? The person who says, I think maybe it's this way, but I'm not sure. Or the person who says, let's go, we'll figure it out. One creates doubt, the other creates trust. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It doesn't mean pretending to know everything. It means understanding that your ideas deserve to occupy space before they've been validated by everyone else. Try this. For the next week, remove all apology language from your conversations. Don't say, sorry if this is a bad idea. Say, here's an idea. Don't say, this might be wrong. Say, here's what I'm noticing. Watch what happens. Because the way you introduce your words teaches people how much value to assign to them. But there's another reason you might feel invisible. And this one surprised me even more. You are focused on being interesting instead of being interested. Now wait, I know what you're thinking. But I'm always interested in other people. Maybe. But let me ask you something. When someone asks, how are you? Do you answer honestly, or do you immediately start worrying about whether your answer sounds entertaining enough? When you're telling a story, are you experiencing the story, or are you secretly monitoring everyone's reactions? Are they bored? Should I speed up? Was that joke funny? Should I stop talking? See, many people who feel invisible aren't actually paying attention to the conversation. They're paying attention to themselves in the conversation. It's like trying to dance while staring at your own feet. You become stiff, careful, disconnected. I remember having coffee with someone who was unbelievably charismatic, not because they told amazing stories, not because they dominated the conversation, but because when they asked me a question, it felt like they genuinely wanted to know the answer. For an entire hour, I felt fascinating. And then I realized something incredible. They barely talked about themselves at all. The most memorable people often aren't the most interesting people. They're the people who make others feel interesting. So here's something you can do immediately. The next time you're in a conversation, stop asking yourself, what should I say next? Instead ask, what am I curious about right now? Because curiosity is impossible to fake, and people can feel the difference. But there's a deeper reason many of us feel invisible, and honestly, this one hurts. We confuse safety with connection. Let me explain. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a swimming pool. You want to swim. You want to connect. You want people to know who you really are. But instead of jumping in, you dip one toe into the water, then another, then maybe your ankle. That's how many people communicate. They reveal opinions that aren't too strong. They tell stories that aren't too personal. They share thoughts that have already been socially approved. And then they wonder why nobody feels connected to them. But connection doesn't happen when people meet the version of you that's trying not to get rejected. Connection happens when people meet the version of you that's willing to be seen. I once asked a friend why everyone seemed drawn to him. He wasn't the funniest person. He wasn't the smartest person. He wasn't even the most confident person. He laughed and said something I'll never forget. I stopped trying to be impressive. That's it. He stopped performing. He stopped calculating. He stopped trying to win every interaction. Instead, he said what he actually thought. He admitted when he was nervous. He shared stories that mattered to him. And people responded because authenticity is magnetic. Think about the people you trust most. Are they perfect? Of course not. They're human. And their humanity gives you permission to be human too. So ask yourself this: when was the last time someone had a conversation with the real you? Not the professional you, not the polite you, not the version of you that's trying to avoid judgment, the real you. Because invisibility often begins the moment authenticity ends. Now here's the final lesson, and in my opinion, it's the one that changes everything. You believe that visibility comes from getting attention, but visibility actually comes from creating emotion. Think about the conversations you remember most. Do you remember every fact that was said? Probably not. But you remember how you felt. You remember the person who made you laugh so hard you forgot where you were. You remember the person who asked a question nobody had ever asked you before. You remember the person who made you feel understood. Human beings are emotional creatures who occasionally use logic, not the other way around. That's why some people can talk for 30 minutes and leave no impression, and others can say one sentence that stays with you for years. I remember meeting someone who asked me a question that completely stopped me. They didn't ask, "What do you do?" They asked, "What's something you've changed your mind about recently?" What happened? Suddenly, I wasn't giving a rehearsed answer. I was thinking, reflecting, feeling. And because I felt something, I remembered them. So if you want to stop feeling invisible, stop trying to say impressive things, start creating emotional experiences, ask unexpected questions, tell stories that reveal something real, express genuine curiosity, share honest observations, because people rarely remember information. They remember moments. And maybe that's what you've been missing this whole time. You thought visibility was about becoming louder. It's not. You thought visibility was about becoming more confident. Not exactly. You thought visibility was about finding the perfect words, but the perfect words have never existed. Visibility happens when you stop trying to prove that you deserve space and start believing that you already do. Because here's what I want you to remember the next time you walk into a room and feel yourself shrinking. You do not become visible when everyone notices you. You become visible the moment you stop hiding. And perhaps the most beautiful irony of all is this: the person you've been waiting for everyone else to see is the person you've been afraid to show all along.